intersection right here. Our roads aren't designed or even programmed for that amount of traffic. That's the second thing. And then the third thing is the economic development piece. And economic development starts at home. That means like we need to start taking the perspective of like our Indian tribes do, is that we need to make sure that as much money that we collect from the tax levies, as much money that we get from grants and sales tax stays here locally through hiring locally and reinforcing those locally owned and operated businesses. So those are my top three priorities.
Thank you. Kari Ann?
Thank you. Keep sliding down on me. So top three, water, obviously, it's going to be that way across Arizona. So supporting the efforts that are already being done to ensure that the new industry coming in is being responsible with that water, that the people moving in are being responsible with water. Secondly to that would be really strengthening the foundation of our county business itself. Looking at making sure that our departments have everything that they need in order to operate efficiently and effectively. And thirdly, I would say our emergency management plan. There's a lot of things that can happen in this world, and being prepared for them in advance is huge. It is what will keep us calm in the event of an emergency. And we need to make sure that we have our communication connected, we know what our local resources are so that we can pull all of that in and that all of that information is up to date and accurate.
Wonderful. Duce?
When I ran in 2016 for this office, my platform was wrapped around the county finances. And here I am 8 years later, and that to me is still the #1 concern. Water is right behind that to me, and I'm not new with water. I was actually on the Board of Supervisors from '89 to '92, back when we were fighting the groundwater wars against Scottsdale, Phoenix, private individuals. Back then, our Board of Supervisors, there were, of course, 3 of us. We were driving to Phoenix every day during the legislative session, back and forth, because we were our own lobbyists. And so I'm not unfamiliar with the wars around water. And with a 3-member board, we are not able to talk to one another outside of a meeting because of the open meeting law. So it is true Holly Irwin has taken the lead on water, but many of all of the decisions that are made by the county are made by the board. So we've all got a hand in what goes on and working through that. But again, I give her credit for taking the lead in the effort she's put in over the years, but that doesn't mean the rest of us are not involved. So one of the big reasons finances is so important to me is because we can have a lot of wants and desires in the county, just like at home. If that's for me, tell them I'm busy for the next hour and a half. But we can have wants and desires, but if we don't have the financial capacity to do it, we can't do anything. So to me, it was critical that we get the county's finances in order. And when I ran in '16, I did that with the thought that I was going to help one of the 2 supervisors that was there to push through that. And unfortunately, my first 4 years, we ended up with a county administrator who did not do well, in my opinion. And we got some things improved, but we didn't make the strides that I was hoping for. This term, we have done amazing things in the financial area. And we taken the county from insolvency to having a reserve, not a surplus, but a reserve. But I'm very proud of that. And we've also paid down major debt. The other issue that's critical here is housing. I know it's an issue in Quartzsite. I was on the phone yesterday with somebody from Quartzsite, and then I was on the phone today with HUD talking about Section 8 housing and how we can get something started. Apparently one of the apartment owners here is interested in that, and so I'm trying to work on that right now. But housing is an issue in Bouse, it's an issue in Parker, it's an issue everywhere in the county, which is kind of awkward because the other thing we need is growth. Right? Well, it's a chicken and the egg. We need growth, but we got to have and we have jobs. We've done a good job with economic development and bringing people into LaPaz County, bringing companies in. So now we need workers, but we have to have a place to house them. So there's a lot of moving parts, but we're working on all of them, and hopefully we'll continue to make some progress.
All right, next question. There are only 2 incorporated towns in LaPaz County, Parker and Quartzsite. How will you work with the residents in the unincorporated areas to better their lives and meet their needs? Kari Ann?
Well, part of that is actually being involved in those communities, actually making those connections between the people who live there and what their concerns are. I knocked on a lot of doors in this campaign, and it was really, really eye-opening what the concerns were, what the hopes were, what people felt about their communities, which was a lot of love and pride. And they wanted their next representative to see that and feel that and hear them. And that is something I'm really good at, is being able to take what somebody brings to me as their concern, their question, their problem, and being able to work through them, because we are a team. That is the team. The team is the citizens and the county seat. So we all have to work together, and that's what I intend to do.
So in District 2, half of Quartzsite is in my district. And I will tell you right up front, I didn't knock on one door. And not because I'm above that, but I'm kind of busy because I have a job being a supervisor. But I do, and I have for 7.5 years, been to, I don't know how many events in Quartzsite. I attend everything that I'm invited to if I'm in town. I attend council meetings on a pretty regular basis so I can be there and be accessible to people and have conversations. I work very closely with your town council members. And you need to remember that if you live in the town of Quartzsite, the town council is your government. Now, the county has some overarching responsibility in Quartzsite because we do charge you property tax. We do have health department responsibilities. Recently invited our community health workers to come out and talk about the community health worker program. So we talked about the community health worker program, which it created more referrals in the Quartzsite area. So we do have some responsibilities, but I see my job in Quartzsite as working with the council, because that is your direct representation in Quartzsite. So I guess that would be my answer. It's try and stay in touch with folks, but work with the council a lot.
Philip?
Okay. I'm running because, Duce, you lost touch with the people. The whole purpose of the members of the Board of Supervisors are to provide that. You're responsible for everything that happens within the county with the special election districts, that's your fire districts and school districts, lighting districts and things like that. You're supposed to have a close connection with the people. And when I was walking around meeting people throughout District 2, to include Quartzsite, Vicksburg, Bouse, and even in some cases upriver, there's a fundamental, it's missing what's happening in the local areas, what people want. People did not want the courts to be consolidated. People did not want the public defenders to be outsourced. And people did not want, businesses to be moved in areas that weren't zoned for that. And I'll tell you, even on my service in the Quartzsite Fire District, there were things that happened with the county, like forgetting to collect the tax levy one year. These are things that come back to the supervisor level that you're responsible for. So when a public official is not doing what they're supposed to be doing with the people, people like me get off their duff and run for office and unseat the incumbent. So if you were doing your job, Duce, I wouldn't be here. And that's why I'm running, is to represent the people. And the day that I stop representing the people, that's the time when somebody else should come and get me out of office. So that gets back to what the supervisor is supposed to do. It's more than just taking care of the finances. It's to make sure that all of the special elected districts, and including the towns, are doing the things that they're supposed to be doing. It's more than just dealing with the council of Quartzsite and Parker. It's also dealing with the people. And the people are what really matters in LaPaz County.
Since you called Duce out, you have 1 minute.
Well, thanks. And that's obviously an insult, but it's a bigger insult if you know me. I have not in 8 years, 7.5 years, I have not missed I missed 2 board meetings. I was there, but on the phone because I had COVID a year apart. Other than that, I haven't missed 1 work session, 1 board meeting. I'm at everything. I'm involved. This is my job. If you can see my desk, I have stacks of notes that I keep to remind myself of the things I'm working on for constituents. Now, if people understand this job and not talk in platitudes but do their research, I am not responsible for what happens in special districts. In fact, the worst thing I could do as a supervisor is try and tell a school district or a fire district what they're supposed to do. They have their own elected board. I would think Phil would recognize that since he serves on one, and they don't want me to tell them what to do. Now, can we help them? I've been to plenty of fire board meetings. His comment about forgetting to do the taxes, the county didn't forget to do it. It was done incorrectly in the assessor's office. Now this is how I work because I feel like I should do this. The assessor made the error. It hurt the Quartzsite Fire District, hurt the Parker Fire District. It wasn't my fault, but I came to that meeting with Anna Camacho to be there to try and help explain what happened and how we were going to try and correct it the following year. So I don't duck away from things, and I do stay in touch.
All right, next question, Philip. What are some of the things you will commit to doing to improve the county budget?
Well, first, make sure that we stay fiscally solvent. That's probably the most important thing. Make sure that we have good people that are hired, credentialed, and qualified to do the job. You know, incompetence, unqualified people, that's your biggest risk to any budget factor. And again, I've been involved in all kinds of budgets over the years. That's the main thing, is to keep the budget squared away. And and right now we have a surplus or a reserve or whatever you want to call it. And again, there are some things that I'd like to see to come back. One is to get the courts back on track where they should be. That's going to cost money. It may be on something that we can even do, but we should make some efforts to get that back on track. But again, we have to do that carefully, cautiously, and keep the budget squared away.
Kari Ann?
So one of the best ways to strengthen your financial position is to go out and seek money that's already out there. Why the county does not have a full-time grant writer is beyond me. We put our tax money not only to the county, but to the state and federally, and they then divvy that money out to a whole bunch of other organizations. And as long as they are doing that, it is our responsibility to make sure as much of that tax money comes back into LaPaz County to serve the people here.
All right, next
Am I
question.
doing that one as well?
Oh, yes, I'm so sorry.
That's okay, I just wanted to make sure.
I'm so sorry, yes.
Well, again, because I love talking about finances, I'm super proud of it. And I've heard at a number of these meetings, I've been taking shots from the left here about the $800,000 surplus and what a ridiculous thing that is to have. Again, it's a reserve. It's not a surplus. It's a budgeted reserve. And it's about, right now we're shooting to get to 3 months of general operating expenses in the reserve. That's so that if the county has a financial problem, we're not going to be in trouble. We can take care of that. So having a reserve is a good business practice. If anybody's had a business, I think you probably know that. My goal is 35% of the general fund budget, but some of the finance people think that might be a little high, 30 might be okay, but that's what we're shooting for. And then not making frivolous decisions based on whims is a way you also protect the finances. You know, we all want to do better for the employees, always. And I've taken some hits from other departments about we didn't give raises. I want you to know that in this year's budget that we just adopted, the Sheriff's Department, and I'm not picking on the Sheriff, I think he's doing a good job, but I want you to know that his budget just went up $700,000. That's his patrol budget. So it's not like the board isn't paying attention. But if we don't do things to save money, like we did with consolidating the courts, then we don't have the money to do those things. When people talk about a surplus, the county is still like $35 million in debt. That's in that PSPRS debt that's for the Sheriff's Patrol, our Sheriff's employees. There's some elected official retirement in there. There's other retirements that the state screwed up on years ago, not the state, but the state board that was handling that. And they left us with this huge debt. We didn't do it, but we have to pay it. So we still have a long way to go. We have some good news coming with solar revenues ahead of us. We're getting more this year, and we've budgeted more, and that's going to continue to grow. But we have to be smart about how we deal with that. We can't just be drunken sailors when money comes into front of us and start spending it, especially not when you're talking about payroll. Some things are one-time expenses. Payroll is forever. It just goes on. So those are critical things for us to be mindful of when we're looking at our finances.
So I do have questions that are for one specific person, and since you brought it up, there is a question just for you. Please explain your decision to close the Quartzsite courthouse despite it creating the most revenue and being more centrally located. Why did you choose Parker?
So consolidating the courts was, again, these are not something that people, we wake up in the morning and go, oh, let's do this. Consolidating the courts was talked about in 2017 when I first went into office. That was an idea that came to us from a number of folks in the financial world out there that deal with county governments. And they talked to us about that idea as a cost savings. Like I said, we brought an administrator in. They didn't move forward, unfortunately. But 4 years later, we brought that conversation came back up when we were labeled insolvent. So it was, what are you going to do? So we started looking at things. Other counties have consolidated justice courts. So what you have to understand is we had 3 courts. And in any county, the justice courts are measured every year by the Arizona Supreme Court and Department of Courts. And they have a threshold of 1,200 judicial credits. If a court reaches 1,200 judicial credits in a year, then the county is required to split that into 2 precincts. Our courts, all 3 of them combined, were not breaking 600 combined. So having 3 courts didn't seem like a very good idea to me. Now, the decision on where it's going to be, that's a tough decision. And it's not a matter of revenue, who's bringing in revenue, because wherever the court ends up, it's going to bring in that revenue. Our court revenues are going up now. They went down during COVID. They're coming back up. I talked to our Justice of the Peace, Tiffany Dyer, a couple of weeks ago about this issue, just to get the latest information. And you are able to do anything you want to do with the courts today, you can do online or through their portal. So they're making it accessible to people with technology. So my personal reason for Parker was that it's located next to the Sheriff's Department and next to the Superior Court, next to the County Attorney's Office. So that seemed like a logical place for it to be when it comes to transportation issues and just the daily workings that go on with the County Attorney's Office and the jail and others. So it made sense to me that would be the location. And by the way, we were told by some citizens that it was going to be a horrible decision because it was going to overwhelm the Parker Court and that we were going to have semi-trucks lined up and down Arizona Avenue and traffic couldn't get through and all these horrible, terrible things were going to happen. Well, fortunately, none of those things have happened and we haven't had to add a second story onto the Parker Court. In fact, Justice Dyer, she's added, I think it's just 1, maybe it might be 2, but I think it's just 1. 1 or 2 employees is how many she's added since we consolidated the courts to take the responsibility of all the people that had previously been employed. So I would argue that it's going very well, and I'm very proud of the decision. I think it was an important decision to make.
And this question was submitted for both Kari Ann and Philip. Kari Ann, you can go first. You've both spoken of reopening the courthouses in Siloam and in Quartzsite. Why would we spend taxpayer dollars to repair Siloam Courthouse and stop Quartzsite from opening as a municipal court?
Okay, so the courts were shut down here in Quartzsite and they were shut down in Siloam. So really the conversation has to be, what do you as Quartzsite residents and what do you as Siloam residents, what do you want done with those buildings? Because having closed down, shuttered government buildings in the 2 towns that have potential for growth is idiotic. You want to talk about financials and growth, you have just stunted those 2 towns from that growth. When somebody comes into town and they start looking around, do I want to land here? Do I want to put my roots down here? And they see that type of business shuttered, it looks like we are going in the wrong direction. So at this point, the courts are shut down. If you want them back, that's what I'm going to fight for. If you have another idea for how those buildings can be repurposed to something that is more useful to your town, then I'm committed to look at that as well. And we're going to have to look at outside grants and funding to bring in so that we don't impact our financial situation here in LaPaz first. So this isn't a willy-nilly. I'm assuming the drunken sailor comment was directed at me because I'm the previous commercial fisherman here. I take finances very seriously. My household, we're balanced. My house is paid off. My vehicles are paid off. We own everything that we have. So I don't just spend money willy-nilly. We need to do it responsibly, but those buildings cannot stay shuttered. That is not good for the town of Quartzsite, and it is not good for the town of Siloam.
Okay. I've dealt with the issue of working with the Office of Courts and other small communities around Arizona. And what it really is as an elected official, you have to have the moral courage to deal with state and federal agencies and their overreach into your local community. And again, with Chevron deference in the Supreme Court, they've now given a lot more power into local communities against the federal and state agencies with that, and we should be able to leverage that. So when it comes to the money, again, it's going to cost a lot more money to reinstate these courts than it is if we would have just kept them in place. It may be a bridge too far. We may not be able to set them back up. It may have to come up with some hybrid solutions. But again, that's going to be a conversation that we have with those communities. And again, if we start those up, there's going to be other things that we cannot do. There may be some other services that we have to cut back. But the important thing is what I think should have happened is that should have been a vote by the people of whether to close the courts down, not by a choice of two people on a three-person board.
So a second question was asked for you, Philip. In previous discussions, you've said that closing these courts has a constitutional implication. Can you explain that?
Yes, because our Constitution gives us, especially in the Bill of Rights, about access to justice, speedy trials. And again, if people have to travel, especially from Siloam, which is like 60 miles, that's a long distance. That's a long distance to get your justice taken care of. And yes, we have video conferencing nowadays, but especially in the heat like right now, that stuff doesn't work all the time. And again, taking cookie cutter of what goes on in Maricopa County and applying that to rural Arizona, that just doesn't work. So again, I can go on in length about the constitutional implications of slowly nibbling away at your access to justice, getting rid of the public defender. Again, many people in this room may not have access to that, but these are important things that as you slowly erode away our constitutional rights, when does it stop? When does the slippery slope stop? And that's one thing is why I say I'm a constitutional candidate. These are important issues.
Can I add anything, or you want me to just I can use my next question and fill in with that, but it's up to you.
You can have 1 minute if it's pressing.
So access to justice, look it up. It's not about location or distance. If you're going to use that theory for where you're going to locate justice courts, then I would argue instead of having 3, we should have probably 10. We should have one in Cibola, one up by the dam on the Parker Strip. We should have one in Ehrenberg. We should have one in Baus. It's not about access to justice. Access to justice is about discrimination, race discrimination, all those kind of things. And again, we are handling it with technology. And I still haven't heard a constitutional implication that would prevent us from doing what we did. And you need to know that the Siloam Justice Court is a tear down, which we've known for years. It has to be torn down. And as far as the quartzsite court, it's limited to what that can be used for because it's on BLM land. We're working with BLM currently and the town council in Quartzsite to be able to lease that building to the town of Quartzsite so they can move their magistrate court over there. That hasn't been a decision made at this point, but that's what we're working towards, just to make the record straight.
Thank you. Question for everyone. What will you do to help offset the rising costs of doing business in this county? Kari Ann?
Okay, so again, it comes down to cleaning up our government departments within LaPaz County, making sure that we are not wasting money on numerous consultants, that we get our employees trained up to where they need to be so that their departments are functioning. Make sure that they've got policy and procedure in place so that we minimize the need for people to come back to the county and say, I believe that my rights were violated and I'm now going to sue the county. We need to firm up those things, absolutely. We also, as I said before, need to have a grant writer. In a small community, you need to bring in as much money as you possibly can from outside sources, and this is money that was ours to start with, and we've already sent it away. It's time to bring it back. We need to increase housing, and we need to encourage services that our citizens want and need. So small businesses like veterinary services, veteran services, childcare, things that our communities need in order to grow and be stable, because that in turn allows more money coming in for property taxes and helps stabilize the finances.
As far as the rising costs and how we're going to fight that, that's a tough one because our economy on a national level sucks. I went to Walmart today to buy a few toiletries and it cost me $120. That was, after yesterday, my wife went and bought a few groceries for a two-family household and spent $220. I had to buy some gas today. That was another $100. So those aren't things I affect in my role to be able to bring costs down. As far as county costs, you may not like this, but we're actually having our fees and charges for everything in the county reviewed to see if we don't need to increase them because we're so far behind the rest of the folks. Now, fees and charges, I don't like paying them, nobody does, but remember, we're going to collect money to run the government some way. I like user fees. If you're the person going in and you need a permit and you're going to build something, then I'm okay with charging you for that because the alternative is if we do it for free, then the masses of taxpayers is going to be paying, somebody's going to pay for it. So I think it's kind of a user fee situation when it comes to our fees and charges. And so I think that's good. I would argue we don't waste a penny on consultants. We're very careful on how we use consultants. Many of our consultants that we're using on the solar are being paid for through the solar, and we've used consultants in place of filling some positions. One of the things we've done in the county as well, in addition to consolidating the courts everybody focuses on, we've also done some other things. We consolidated our HR and our finance department. It drove me crazy that we had two directors. Well, in fact, we got to a place where our budget didn't allow enough in either department to afford to recruit anybody for those positions. We tried. It was advertised for a long time. So Megan had the idea, and it was a great idea, I thought, to combine those two positions. In a county our size, it makes perfect sense. We're able to pay more to one person, but we're actually saving money because we're not paying two. We didn't just give them all the money. They're getting a decent salary now. So we've looked at many ways. As far as a grant writer, I would not be opposed to a grant writer. In fact, there's a gentleman, his name is John, I think it's John Luther. He writes grants for the town of Parker, for the Parker Area Chamber of Commerce. I've written letters of support for some of his grants. I've talked to him. I'm familiar with them. It's something I've been encouraging now for probably a couple years with the county administrator that we really need to get to that point where we could use somebody. Now, that said, the county writes a lot of grants. We just did a $200,000 planning study on the Bouse Community Park because we want to make that one of the off-road sites. And now, as of yesterday, we're getting ready to apply for the grant to build that park out into that staging area. So there's some exciting things going on, and we do a lot of things with grants in the county already. Different departments are good at writing them, but I wouldn't mind having a grant writer on board, and like I said, I've talked to Megan about that. One of the things you learn if you're in this position, I tell everybody all the time, when I took that office, I went through all the drawers, and I'll be damned, there was not a magic wand in any one of them. So I have to work things through the process. I can't just dictate.
Okay, we're coming into times of fiscal austerity, and this is affecting everybody. There's not a lot we can do to change the economy. Again, those forces are dictated to us from outside, but there are things that we can do, wise policy decisions we can do at our level. One is, we hire locally, we do as much as we can locally, we keep as much money as we can locally, either through hiring locally, doing business locally, finding those local grant writers to do our business instead of hiring people in Phoenix or in other places. The other thing is reinforcing those local businesses. The more business we can keep here, the better. But the most important thing is avoid the lawsuits. If we do stupid things and we keep on getting pulled into lawsuits, that's money we lose. And again, I have a lot of experience in small rural communities all across the state where we don't have large budgets, we don't have a lot of money, and we have to be smart. And it's really the balance between your wishbone and your backbone. And again, you have to come up with a good plan. And again, we have to be realistic. We're in a small town, and we can't do a lot of the things that we're going to be doing that other people in the state can afford to do. And again, that's my approach is it's not going to be, yes, let's buy this and buy that and the other thing. Let's really look at it. Can we do it cheaper? It's like all of us in here that are small business owners or have been ranchers, it's make do or do without, use it up and wear it out. That's good business you can apply in local government.
Speaking of businesses, this one was directed to you, Kari Ann. Please explain your position on blocking the garage door company and why you were so adamantly opposed to the rezoning change.
Oh, thank you for that one. So yeah, Unique Garage Doors, the gentleman there bought a 68-acre parcel of land, happened to be right in front of my home, my neighborhood. And what we were opposed to in that, because obviously our feelings didn't matter in that. It didn't matter that we just didn't want a manufacturing plant in our front yard. Obviously, nobody should want that. It doesn't make a lot of sense for your calm of your home to have that kind of business there. But from a legal perspective, it wasn't the right place for that type of business. We have a comprehensive plan, albeit it is outdated. It statutorily needed to be updated a long time ago, and we're finally getting to that this year. But in that comprehensive plan, that neighborhood was designated as agricultural or residential. And those of us that invested in our properties out there, we invested with that knowledge that we were moving into and we were building roots into a residential area. We have little over 5% of our land here in LaPaz County is privately owned. Where we put things matters because we only get to do it once. We have a housing shortage. Well, you start putting industry into areas that are designated as residential, you start affecting people wanting to move into that area and build their roots and build their homes. There was a place for it. I was never against Unique Garage Doors. None of our neighbors were against Unique Garage Doors. We were against the placement of it because that is not what that area was designated as. Now, I heard from the incumbent here and several others that there had been discussions about 72 becoming an industrial corridor. Well, discussions were not put into the comprehensive plan, and the comprehensive plan is what we as elected officials are supposed to be guided by because that is your voice. That is how you want to see your neighborhoods grow. So yes, when it comes down to fighting for my home, my family, and my neighborhood and my community, absolutely I will do that every day. But my fight was never with Unique Garage Doors. My fight was with Duce Minor.
Since she called you out, you can have 1 minute to rebut if you would like.
Well, so when you're in this job and you understand it, if you think you get to do this job based on your personal preferences, you're not going to last long. You're going to run into things that you're going to disagree with or have to work through. That's what happened with that particular situation. And I did have a position different than Kari Ann's. I love being told I didn't hear them. I met with Kari Ann and her husband multiple times. I met with other residents multiple times. We had multiple meetings. There are people passionate for and there are people passionate against issues. And it's my job to look for what's best for the county. Now here's the kicker. I keep hearing the word industrial, but it was not an industrial request, it was a light industrial. Read the code, light industrial. You can't vibrate the ground, you can't make noise, you can't have emissions or smoke. Everything has to be done inside a building. Here's the important thing to know, that land as it's currently zoned today, the gentleman who owns it could put a barn on that property just as big as his current manufacturing facility, 130,000 square feet, and he could put, with 71 acres that he owns, he could put 142 head of cattle. That could be sheep, pigs, you name it, he could put out there. He could grow alfalfa and use the water. So I thought this was a much better use and a much better transition into the development that the area needs.
Do you need it? Yeah.
Yes, he could also turn that parcel of land into housing, which would be fantastic. So yes, there are lots of options and we can go down that path. He did actually suggest maybe he would put pigs on the property. We said, okay, that's what it's zoned for, if that's what you want to do. And I would say that Unique Garage Doors did move 4 miles down the road into the town of Bouse. So they are now productively benefiting the fire department in Bouse. They are on a piece of property that was zoned, as I understand, correctly for what the purpose was. And they purchased that property within a week of us stopping the zoning change. And if you go and look at that building now, I still stand behind the fact that I'm glad it's not in our front yard in a residential area.
Philip, would you like to chime in?
And again, this is also a reason why I'm running too, is because, La Paz County is a big county, but we need to be respectful of the people that live there. Again, the people upriver live upriver because they like that lifestyle and what they want. There's a certain lifestyle of the people in Baus and Vicksburg and every other part of this county. Quartzsite has a certain vibe to it. And, you know, this place in LaPaz County, there's fewer and fewer places like this. And that's the reason why we have to keep our codes updated, we have to keep our plan updated. And if it hasn't been updated since 2005, that's why you have these problems. And again, we have a process that if you have to have a conditional use or things, there's a process by which this goes through that we have to use. And if we do things behind the scenes and things like this, that causes these problems. And again, I believe people should use the property the way they use it, but we have to be able to have an open and honest process that doesn't cheat the people that moved into an area because it had a certain character. And again, it's a big county. There's a lot of places where we can fit things. Thank you.
So this is for everyone. The WAPA high power lines that run throughout District 2 have been associated with an increase of cancer deaths. They were said to be removed by 1998. 2 years ago, WAPA representatives said they would be removed in 2 years. That's now. They have not been touched. What is your plan on holding them to removal of them? You can begin.
I love that one. That's one I'm really proud of, because you ever try to move the federal government or a federal agency or a quasi-federal agency, I'd have an easier time going out and pushing this building over 10 feet by myself. It's not an easy chore. But one of the things that I'm pretty good at is developing relationships, and sometimes that can take time. But I've developed a relationship with the gentleman that's in the position to make that happen at WAPA. And here's their process. This sounds unbelievable to me, but this is their process. They vote once a year with their stakeholders, they call them, which are their customers. They have a vote in December, and they set their budget for the following year, and they depict the projects that they're going to do. So every November, I would call him and we would talk. And then in December, he would call me and let me know they didn't do it. Well, a couple of years ago, I called him and he said, we got it. It's been approved. But it wasn't going to happen in 2 years. There's a planning period. They have to pick the route. They have to reroute the lines. But the important headline here is those WAPA lines along the Parker Strip are going to go away. Now, I'm praying that I'm back in this office in January again, because I want to be here when that happens, because I want to celebrate that. I've been in that area for 47 years and hated those things. They outlived their life expectancy 20 years ago or something, and there's problems with them. But they are going to be moved, and they are currently doing the rerouting, but it has been put in the plan. It is part of their budget, and it is going to be accomplished. So I'm very excited about that.
Philip?
Well, I'll believe it when I see it. Dealing with multi-jurisdictional challenges, there's always something that can off-ramp it. You know, you want to make sure that the budget is squared away for each one of those federal agencies, and there's always something that comes up, like either through the EPA or the Bureau of Reclamation, anybody else that has an issue with there, especially with the rerouting. But again, it's making sure that all of your representatives are involved in this issue, and you may want to start having conversations to have a Superfund site designated so that you make sure that this gets done. But it's been a long time happening. That should have been done a long time ago.
Kari Ann?
Yeah, so you're dealing with federal government here. As far as county supervisors, we can squeak, we can make noise, we can build relationships, and absolutely all of that is essential and important when we're representing the people in our county and our district. I'm glad that Duce has a good relationship with that particular person. I would say that's a first that I've heard as far as people that he has good relationships with, and I'm looking forward to building those relationships in other areas that are needed as well.
I guess I can.
Do you need
well, Sonny probably hates my guts, but I've had a decent relationship with him over the years as our state senator. He helped me get the Buckskin Fireboat funded. Leo Biasucci, who's the majority leader in the House of Representatives, we have a decent relationship. He's the gentleman from the House who's been working with me on the problem we have with Arizona Western College in LaPaz County. I can call right now and get William Mack to say hello from BLM if that would make people feel better. I have relationships all over this state and in other states and around the country. Again, this is my job. This is what I do day in and day out. And so I don't know what people think I do all day, but trust me, there's a lot of phone calls, talking to a lot of people, a lot of meetings. I travel a lot to go talk to those people when I need to. But if you're going to do anything in this job and be good at it, you better have relationships. And I've been pretty good at that in my life. My wife might question that, but.
Since you brought up the Arizona Western College, this is for everyone. What is your position on Arizona Western College receiving over $5 million per year of LaPaz County tax revenue while graduating less than 10 AA degree students and less than 15 certificate students per year, and our school here in Quartzsite still remains empty? Philip?
Well, I'll go ahead and start. So how our relationship with AWC is a little bit different in Parker than it is here in Quartzsite. And again, the relationship with AWC has been long, ever since we became a county, and there's been frustrations with it, especially here in Quartzsite, since day one. I'm not a proponent of throwing the baby out with the bathwater or trying to work with another county, because I think it'll be a worse deal. But what I think needs to happen is that we need to have a conversation with Dr. Core and say, hey, we need to have some better resources. Here in Quartzsite, it's probably more of like adult continuing education. And I've had frustrations with here of trying to have, quick sidebar, I tried to bring in one of the leading experts on gemstone evaluation from GIA to come give a lecture here, and I was told, no, he can't come here because he makes money off of gemstones. It's like, that's crazy. We're in Quartzsite, this is what we do. But again, if they don't want to have people come lecture here in a town, then really why are we here? So I'm of the philosophy that let's make the system work. Let's here in Quartzsite, let's focus on the adult continuing education. Up in Parker, let's focus on more of a broader approach. Again, I'm a substitute teacher in the local school districts, and we cannot have our advanced, the other thing that's not being counted there is some of the advanced courses that we have with our high school students, like the welding and the advanced placement courses in math and science that AWC provides as well. So that's something that's not being mentioned in this conversation.
Kari Ann?
So that would be one of the relationships that I was referring to, and really mostly because of what Mr. Minor has stated about AWC this last year in working with Biasucci on the bill that they tried to pass. I'm glad that it didn't go through. I do believe that we should have a mechanism to get out of a bad deal, but the way that the bill was written, we wouldn't find out what our responsibility financially for that was until after the people had voted on it, and that's a very dangerous position to be in. Not only that, but we are required to be part of or have a college as part of our county supervisor, or sorry, our county foundation. And his reasoning when the bill didn't go through was, well, we really didn't expect it to go through, but we were trying to bring Dr. Core to the table because negotiations had kind of gone sideways. You don't go to somebody with a $128 million budget when your budget's $44 million and say, I'm going to try and strong arm you into a conversation now. Not a great way to build a relationship. So it sounds like there needs to be new blood, at least in that department, and building that relationship so that we can move forward in a productive manner, make sure that we're getting what we feel is our $5 million worth of value, because with a $128 million budget, $5 million isn't a lot of money to them. So a lot of that is explaining the needs cohesively and specifically so that they have something to work with.
So I don't even know where to start. There's so many good ones on this one. So first of all, I guess I'll start with this. I spent 8 years on the Parker Unified School District Governing Board, school board member for 8 years. I'm a past president of the Arizona School Board Association. My daughter just got her master's degree. To say that I would not be supportive of education would be just a complete false statement. I've always been very supportive of education. It's very important. But what AWC has been doing in LaPaz County is wrong, and I think it should be fixed. We need community college available in our area. What Philip was trying to talk about was dual enrollment, where high school kids are able to take college classes at the same time they're taking high school classes. Many kids are able to graduate high school with their AA degree in their pocket. Great programs. Those are not things I would ever want to see go away. I fought for them when I was on the school board. But Arizona Western College, frankly, is ripping us off. Now, again, not every relationship is great. It can be professional and have disagreements. Dr. Core and I very much disagree on things at this point, but I have met with him numerous times. I won't throw any of the council members in the room under the bus, but some of your council members have been a big part of those meetings. We've met with Dr. Core many times, and if I had a load of snake oil that I wanted to sell, he would be the first person I would call, because he is great at smiling and selling you the snake oil, and then you leave and nothing happens. It just happened again with our local hospital. I was just talking to the director at the hospital. He'd been trying to work with AWC to get classes that would benefit the hospital. They finally agreed to do it. Now they're going to do it in Yuma. So he wasn't very happy about that. But the community college can do good things. I think everybody's aware by now, hopefully you are. We have a company bringing broadband fiber into LaPaz County throughout the entire county, and they're going to bring it all the way to the homes. The name of the company is WeCom. You can look it up and learn about them, but they're actually progressing as we speak right now. They're looking for a building, they're looking for a yard, and Arizona Western College is going to put on courses for WeCom to train fiber optic technicians. So community colleges have a great value, but we shouldn't be spending the amount of money we're spending, which is nearing $6 million now, and they spend roughly $1 million back here. So we need to find a better way for us to be represented. Sometimes you can do things easier than other times, but I'm not afraid of a fight, and I want to continue to pursue this situation to help make it right. I don't know if we'll ever get it perfect, but I'd sure like to see it a lot better, because it's just not fair to the citizens of the taxpayers of La Paz County. Oh, by the way, she didn't give me the stop yet. Just so if you don't know, and I think you do, one of the biggest problems we have is we're in the Arizona Western College district, and I could spend another 10 minutes on that, but we're on a 3-2 vote. So they have 3 members, we have 2, so we don't have much chance.
All right, next question. It has been reported that over 200 La Paz County employees live outside the county, causing a negative impact on the county. And so being that the money that they earn goes to the town they live in, not staying in this county. What will you do to improve this situation? I don't remember who went first. Kari Ann, you can just go first.
Okay, so again, that comes back to having housing. The reason a lot of people are living outside of our county is because they don't have a place to rent or the funds to buy an empty lot and put a home on it and drill a well and do all of that. It saddened me when I spent all that time upriver how many toy barns there were popped up into the upriver communities off of the river itself. Those toy barns, although I understand they serve a purpose, they're not housing people. And again, we are on limited amount of land. So the fact that the county had policy in place where these people could put up these 2-story toy barns really is kind of cutting your foot off despite your face there. So we need to bring in some housing for them for sure, and it has to be housing for them and their families. It cannot just be Section 8 housing. It cannot just be studio or 1 bedroom. So we need to address that, and then we also need to encourage those services, again, like I said, to come in here. People who are working, they've got pets, they've got children, they've got other things that they need services for that they can't get here. I'm watching people leave La Paz County because the services, just the bare minimum services, aren't here for them right now. So we need to encourage that and think a little outside the box. When you're in a rural community like this, thinking outside the box is really important.
Please.
Repeat the question, because that was all, I kind of got lost track bouncing around there. Please, I'm sorry. It was housing, I think, just in general. Oh, the 200, I remember 200 people.
200 La Paz County employees live outside of the
that number could be accurate. I think that number is probably exaggerated, and I hate it. I know how a dollar rotates and how it moves through the community, and I don't like sending them away. I hate it. Phil mentioned earlier it's a huge county. It is, but like 5% of the land is available for is private deeded land. I'm also kind of a property rights guy, and the toy barns that have been beat up, and I understand that people don't like something new, but I may not like it. But it's not my role to tell the property owner who is building within the codes that he can't do it because somebody next door doesn't like it or because he's not going to live there full time. The river, if you're familiar with the Parker Strip, it kills me because if you go out on the river, probably 50%, maybe more, I'm afraid to say, of the beautiful homes you see along the river that are multi-million-dollar homes, those are weekend homes where people come every few weeks or so. That's great for them because they've got the money to do it. But it's not my job to tell them, well, you can't have that because we need workforce housing. We need workforce housing. But the way to do that is to find some developers and get the land and move some things forward. Not chase people away. But I would also say, I don't know how many doors were knocked on, but I could take my opponent to a few doors and let her knock on them and meet some of the people who actually live in those toy barns full time in the apartment. Because that's the requirement that they had. They have to have an apartment in order to qualify to be located in a residential area. And that's what they've done. And I know plenty of people that are living in those today. So, but yeah, we need workforce housing. I wouldn't make fun of Section 8 housing. It's something that's needed, I'm sure, for people. Again, that's coincidentally just came up 2 days ago. It was reached out to me, so I'm doing my investigating and putting them in touch with HUD, and now it's going to be the Housing Authority for the state. But I'm all for, but that's part of setting the environment, which I think the town council has done a very good job of in Quartzsite. I think the county's done a very good job of creating the environment to attract people to come in here and do it. It's not the county's job to go build workforce housing. It's not the town of Quartzsite's job to go build workforce housing. It's our job to make it possible for people to come in and do that and make them want to do that, not chase them away.
Okay, I'll take a different tack. In the 4 small communities that I've served as a town manager, you had to live in that town if you were going to take their dime and work and be employed for them. And in fact, there are actually some very large communities. I'll give you an example, the city of Philadelphia. If you're going to work for Philadelphia, you have to work there. And if you're not going to live within the city limits, you have to go in front of that council and explain why. And if you're going to say something like, well, the schools don't work for me or anything like that, that's not a good enough reason. You have to have a real legitimate reason of why you're not going to live within the city limits. And I'll tell you, our schools, they're not the best schools, but I'm a product of those schools, and I got to go to Ivy League schools in my experience. So that is not sufficient. And again, there are some solutions out there for our workforce housing. You know, some of our school districts do provide housing. You know, we could also work out with the Colorado Indian tribes. They have some housing options, but nobody's ever having that conversation with them. But again, we also have to have some realistic conversations with the people that work here. You know, here in Quartzsite, everybody lives in park models. Our mayor lives in a park model. I live in a park model. Just about everybody here lives in a park model. There's probably only 3 people here in this audience that lives in a stick-built house. That's just the character of Quartzsite, and it's probably like that in the rest of the county. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. People just need to realize if you're going to live and work in LaPaz County, that's our culture. There's nothing wrong with that, and we need to be serious about changing the policy that if you're going to be in LaPaz County and you're going to work for us, hey, you're going to live like us and you're going to live with us. That transcends in everything. You know, our problem with volunteers in our organizations, it all comes back to that living and working here.
So speaking of employees, this question was directed to you, Duce. In the 8 years you've been supervisor, the county still has not adopted an evaluation program for its employees. Why? They are the backbone for growth in the county.
I agree 1,000%. And it's one of my biggest, again, what you learn when you're on a board is you don't have a magic wand and you don't have dictator authority. You work through the process. And, you know, we're a small county. We have limited number of employees. And so it's a matter of which issues we can take on. I've heard Kari Ann many times talk about her expertise in policies and procedures and the need for that. I don't disagree with the need. In fact, if you look at our history and what we've done in the last 8 years, particularly the last 3.5 years, is we've adopted a lot of policies. We're putting those things in place. Now, I was frustrated when I came into office in 2017 that they hadn't done evaluations in many years, and I pushed forward with that. At that time, our HR director, Mary, was supposed to be working on that. It never happened. We didn't get it done. They told us there were reasons we couldn't do it. But anyway, now with our new finance HR person, they are putting the policies and procedures in place to codify them so that we can move forward with the evaluations, because I'm a believer in them. When I ran the organization PACE in Parker, only had 4 employees, but they were always evaluated every 6 months. I think it's an important thing for the company. I think it's an important thing for the employee to have those evaluations. So the fact that I'm for it isn't why it hasn't happened. It's just hasn't happened yet. So, but again, when you're running, you can pontificate and throw things out there and say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. I get it. One of the things you learn when you get elected is your limitations. That's probably the biggest lesson of being elected to a position, is learning your limitations.
And another one directed for you about employees. If the county has been doing so much better fiscally on your watch, why have you not advocated for pay raises for all county employees?
So in the time I've been there, we've given COLAs, I don't know how many of I've done 8 budgets now, I guess, and probably 3 or 4 of those we've been able to do COLAs. Again, when you're broke and you don't have any money and you're insolvent, it's difficult to give raises. But now we have ourselves in a better position, and a number of employees have had their positions evaluated and restructured, and we've been able to advance salaries in that way. We've combined some positions, which has allowed us to increase salaries in that way. You know, the biggest department in the county, of course, is the sheriff's department. I just mentioned that their budget this year is going up $700,000 on the patrol budget. We're putting money into those departments so that they can do more for their employees. So I'm super excited about what we're going to be able to do going forward for the employees, and I'm not ashamed of what we've done so far, because we're trying to manage within our means. Again, it's easy to say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, but when you're sitting down and you don't have the money to do it, you're kind of stuck. So we'll get there.
This really comes back to management. You know, who's that person that's the administrator? You know, the administrator is responsible for all things. It's responsible to the Board of Supervisors. And if your administrator is focused on evaluation, is focused on a good leadership climate, it's going to transcend through the entire organization. I've worked in a small town where we were paying everybody minimum wage, but everybody loved working there because they were able to have the opportunity to fix the problems in their town, to fix the potholes. And again, if you have good leadership and it's a fun place to work, you know, pay is only one factor of why people are in government service. You know, it's not the most important thing in some cases.
I agree with Cushman on that. You know, pay is one factor, and morale is another big one, and that comes back to ensuring that we do have policy and procedure. I've heard numerous times that, you know, this county is young. We stopped being young a long time ago. Policy and procedure should have been in place within the first 5 to 10 years of this county being here, and then should have been kept in place. And it's done a disservice not only to the citizens of LaPaz County, but it's a disservice to the employees, because morale is affected by that. They are not left with a guide of what their job is and how to do it, and something to fall back on when they're questioned about it. And so there's a couple of departments that take a big beating for not having policy and procedure in place, or not having up-to-date policy and procedure in place. So when you're poor, you've definitely got to make sure that morale is topmost, and we need to focus better on that in making sure that our employees have what they need in order to succeed.
Philip, you brought up that you were the interim manager of 4 towns. The question is, if you were the interim town manager for 4 towns, why were you not hired as the permanent town manager?
Because the job was an interim assignment, and my job was to help